everybody, welcome to my channel. Something different today. I am making a mixed media home decor, well maybe garage decor item. I am making this workshop sign as a retirement gift for my husband. I'm going to be using a brand new product from the TCW, these letter stencils. I'm using the one in the middle, traditional, but there's also script and calligraphy. So my sign measures 42 inches by 10 inches. And as you can see, I have kind of a mock-up of how I am planning to go. I took time with the stencils, stenciled out the words, and laid it out on my board so that I can see exactly how everything is going to fit. Doing stenciling out the words, it takes time, but it gives you practice using that stencil to get a clean image, and it really helps in setting up the composition. Right now I found the center point of my sign, 21 inches, and I'm folding these parts and centering it to the sign. This is an easy way of doing it instead of just eyeballing it. It allows you to get it a little bit more precise. And I thought that was necessary for the sign. Now, the saw blade that you see me working on right now and the tools, those all came from supercoloring.com. They have tons of printables that you can utilize in your mixed media pieces. And I've just taken them on my printer and I've played around and sizing it to get it to fit whatever size my sign is. So if you're making a sign and it's a little smaller, you can shrink these down. So yes, life as I know it is going to change with my husband retiring and both of us in the same space full time. So I'm really looking forward to that and all the opportunities that that will bring. So as I said, these are printables from supercoloring.com, and I've just rough cut them out to get the exact. So what I want to do with the tools is I want to make a template that I can trace around. So I have the copy paper one. I've just taped it on to tag board and I am cutting it out to get a template. Easy peasy. Nothing about this sign making is difficult, and you can use the same basic steps to make any kind of sign that you want. It doesn't have to be a workshop sign. So there we have it, and I can flip it over onto the other side. Now I decided that I didn't want the beige color as my base color. That was kind of exterior house paint that I just put on there. So now I'm mixing up Prussian blue with Naples yellow, and together that makes a beautiful teal. If you want it more green, you got to add a little bit more of the yellow. You want it more to the blue teal, you add more blue. And then I'm adding some white gesso just to lighten it. I want my dark black letters to show up. Then I'm just using a big brush and giving this, it took a couple coats to get it to the color that I liked. There is some variation in color. Some parts are a little greener, bluer, but overall I really liked the color. So now I've placed things back on the board, centering it again, finding that 21-inch mark, and I'm using a Stabilo all pencil. This one's white and it's showing up, and I'm going very lightly because I don't want to push into the hardboard. I don't think it would work, or scratch the paint, which isn't completely cured. I recommend that you let it cure overnight before you start doing more things, just to give it a little extra time. And then I'm finding the center point and giving myself some guidelines. Now I have this worked out. I have here's my center point. I have it marked where that M is going to go. So I'm looking at my prototype, I guess, and eyeballing it. Now on the stencil, there is a score line at the bottom under the letters, and I'm matching that up to line up with the white line that I've made on the board. Now I'm using the Stabilo All pencil. You can use chalk because it's completely erasable once I do all my stenciling. So then once I have my center one, I'm going to work to the left and work to the right and stencil all the other ones in. I recommend drawing each one because as I put the stencil on top, you might get some paint and transfer that, and then you have a mess. So it's just step by step. Now I'm applying the paint through the stencil with a makeup sponge. I'm getting some paint on it and patting it off on my glass surface. You don't want it really wet because you don't want it to go underneath the stencil and make a mess. You want pretty precise. Have a baby wipe in hand in case you make any mistakes or you don't like how it worked. And just go letter by letter, taking your time, lining it up, eyeballing the space in between. Having that prototype really helped me figure out what would fit and how to do the actual on the board stenciling, because I could look at my prototype and adjust. And you know what? Be gentle with yourself. It doesn't have to be so exact. Sometimes close enough is enough. I think we're so hard on ourselves. Now this O is kind of on a slant and I don't really like it, but I could have turned it so that it was completely up and down. Do you see how it's kind of a little bit skewed? And I'm just working out from the midpoint. So once you give yourself those guidelines underneath it and the midpoint, that makes life so much easier, along with making that prototype. Take the time to do that. These letters are about 1.5 inches tall. I think I'm going to get a lot of use out of these and giving this a good dry and cleaning up anything that I didn't want. And here I'm getting rid of the Stabilo All pencil. Again, I highly recommend leave it, let it completely dry and cure, and then come in with the baby wipe. I'm rushing the process because I'm doing it in a video and I want to get this done, but make it life easy for yourself and give it time. So here's the template. So I'm just going to use the Stabilo All pencil and trace around this tool motif that I've got going on. And my plan at the beginning was to paint it black. Once I traced it, I liked the outline look of it. So I thought, well, maybe I'm just going to outline it. This is a work in progress. My ideas changed as I progressed. Here I'm just measuring how high from the top, and I want to roughly get that the same on the other side. Again, close enough. And I flipped the template to the other side so that the hammers, both of the hammers are pointing to the words Tim's Workshop. And there we have it. Now I thought, I like the outline. So I grabbed my liner brush, white paint that I thinned down with acrylic paint, and I'm just giving a fine line. Now you could use your Posca pen for this, a wider Posca pen, because you want it to show up. And I just realized as I'm saying that I did buy a wider Posca pen. I totally forgot about using it. And I'm going around this with the white. The key to this is thin your paint. Go slowly. I find using the liner brush easier than using the pens and the fine line bottles. Just have to turn it upside down here so my hand doesn't get in with it where it's wet. Make a mistake, get your baby wipe out. Working on a large piece like this and trying to videotape is very challenging, so please forgive if I'm off screen for any little bit of time. And like I say, if you are doing a sign for your art or craft room, follow the same steps in how to set it up, how to center it, use my tips and tricks, and use your own images. I'm making a template from the saw blade. That worked really well to have that template, so that's what I'm doing. I just printed off the printable from supercoloring.com, got it the size I wanted it, and now I'm going to cut out the middle part because I plan on putting some words in there. And there's the saw blade. And inside it's going to say established 2023. So again, I'm finding the center mark and giving myself the guidelines so I can do the stenciling. That's the big lesson in this video. Give yourself time. I'm using this Stabilo oil pencil. You could use a different colored Stabilo because they are water soluble. A watercolor pencil might work, a light color that shows up on your background. Then I'm just folding the papers, finding the center point. It's not exact, but it doesn't have to be. Close enough. And I've got masking tape underneath it. Now, when I'm setting up the side, I realize that, you know, there's some dead space there. So it's a little too long, but since this is the size I have, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to use a border. And I'm using this stencil from the Crafters Workshop. It's called Tribal Triangles. And I'm giving a little bit of pattern on each side. And I didn't want white here. I wanted unbleached titanium, this beige color, kind of the color that the sign was initially. And at this point I realized, you know, I'm putting the unbleached titanium here. That white really doesn't go that I outlined. So I'm going to be readdressing that. As I said, the tools part of things I keep revisiting and tweaking as I go. Loving the sign. It kind of has that X pattern like the tools there. So then I'm doing it on the other side. And I go once with the stencil, with the paint, and I go over it a second time, keeping the stencil in place. If you want to make sure it doesn't move, tape it down. I didn't. It stayed pretty good for me, but that's a way to make sure that it doesn't move and you get a good end stenciling. And just wiping up any of the little bits that go over. So I do go over, remember where I painted white with the fine liner pen? I do end up going over it with the unbleached titanium. Get rid of the white and have that. Here I decided I wanted to do some shading inside, make these stand out a little bit more. So I'm shading with the Prussian blue. And my goal was just to shade inside to make it stand out a little bit more. But as I'm going, again, I'm changing the plan and I decide, you know what, I'm going to give this a wash of the Prussian blue inside. I want it to stand out a little bit more than what it is. So that's what you see me doing right here. So don't be afraid to pivot, to change your plan as it evolves. I had a lot of this planned out in my head, but I changed a lot of it as I went. Tried something, it wasn't quite going the way I wanted it. I liked where it ended up best. So until it's done, it's not done. And because the Prussian blue is what's used to make that teal in the background, it goes really well. And now I'm ready to do the saw blade. So I grab my Stabilo All pencil, the white one, and I'm tracing my template that I made and going round and round and round. Now I thought about painting this, the Prussian blue, as well, but I opted to have it coordinate more with the border that I have on each side, and I'm painting it the unbleached titanium with a little bit of white gesso in there. And that took a couple coats and, you know, little touch-ups. Let it dry in between. Before you put another layer of paint, let it completely dry. You'll save yourself some headache. It tends to get a little globby or sticky if you put wet on wet or partially drying. So there is the saw blade. And I'm just making sure that that's dry. And there I'm just adding a little bit more touch-ups. And I downgraded the size of my brush to a smaller angle brush to get in. But I like using angle brush for painting in these kind of spaces. So now I have the words, my tools, my rules, and I'm giving myself the guidelines. A line, where do I want it to go? And then the center point. And back to stenciling. And I'm starting, you know, putting where it's at the center point and lining it up. So again, I cannot reiterate enough how making the prototype, stenciling it on plain copy paper first, has saved me so much time and making mistakes at this stage. So worth it. And I found as I progressed, as I did more and more stenciling using these letter stencils, I just got better at it. So give yourself time to practice. So it says my tools, my rules. Then I'm edging with black, and it doesn't matter if this is an art journal page or an iCAD, edging it always works. And then I'm shading on the other side of the tools just to make it stand out again. I'm not sure if by the time this airs, if my husband will have had his retirement party and he is aware that he has this, but shh, it's a secret. Now I'm shading around the saw blade as well. And now to hide any blemishes or marks or anything, I'm just splattering. I splatter with black, I splatter with the unbleached titanium, and then I splatter for a little bling with gold. It's just a little detail. It hides those little imperfections. And there's the gold. Add the bling. So again, don't share my secret. Until next time, go get creative.